The Celestial Institute of Advanced Sciences occupied the entire northern hemisphere of Luminara 7, a space station so absurdly large that it had its own weather patterns. Well, carefully controlled atmospheric circulation systems that the marketing department insisted on calling weather patterns. The Institute prided itself on being the pinnacle of galactic education, where the brightest minds from 73 different species gathered to pretend they understood quantum mechanics while secretly copying homework from each other in the library. For 800 cycles, the Institute had maintained its reputation through a simple formula. Accept only species from the galactic community's approved list of civilized worlds, maintain impossibly high standards, and ensure that nobody from a Class 7 or higher Deathworld ever got close enough to remind everyone that intelligence and civilization were very different concepts than survival and adaptability. Then the Galactic Council, in what historians would later describe as either progressive thinking or catastrophic oversight depending on which committee you asked, decided that isolating developing species was counterproductive to galactic harmony. Thus began the Cultural Exchange and Educational Outreach Program, which administrators privately referred to as Operation Please Don't Let Them Eat Anyone. The human arrived on a Tuesday. Not that Tuesdays existed in galactic standard timekeeping, but the human had apparently insisted on maintaining her homeworld's calendar system, which was both charmingly primitive and administratively nightmarish. She stepped off the transport shuttle into the receiving bay, with a small backpack, sensible shoes, and a smile that made the Cloroxian greeting committee unconsciously step backward. It was not a threatening smile. That was what bothered them. The human stood approximately 1.6 meters tall, which was small by galactic standards, where the average sentient being measured closer to 2 meters. She had brown skin, dark hair pulled into something called a ponytail, and wore what her file described as typical adolescent Earth clothing. Blue leg coverings called jeans and a shirt with text that read, "I survived chemistry class." The Cloroxian administrator, whose name was a series of whistles that translated roughly to harmonious greeting of morning dew, but who went by Harmon for practical purposes, found the shirt both baffling and slightly ominous. The human's eyes moved constantly, tracking every person in the receiving bay, noting exits, cataloging details. Harmon, whose species had evolved from herd animals on a peaceful garden world, recognized predator behavior when he saw it. His educational specialty was xenobiology, and his survival instinct was screaming that something was categorically wrong with this picture. "Welcome to Celestial Institute," Harmon said, his translator rendering his whistles into galactic common. "I am Administrator Harmon. We are pleased to host Earth's first exchange student." "Thank you so much," the human replied, and her voice was warm, genuine, enthusiastic. "I'm really excited to be here. Your station is beautiful. I've been reading about the Institute since I got accepted, and I still can't believe I'm actually here." She extended her hand, which Harmon knew from the briefing materials was a human greeting gesture. He touched her palm briefly with his manipulator appendage, trying not to think about the fact that humans were a species that had evolved to throw rocks at their prey until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. Her skin was warm, very warm. The file had mentioned something about high metabolic rates. "Your quarters are in Residential Wing 7, Harmon continued. "We have placed you with other exchange students from developing worlds. I trust you will find the accommodations comfortable." "I'm sure they'll be great," she said, still smiling. "On my planet, college students usually live in tiny rooms with terrible heating and mysterious stains. As long as the air is breathable and the gravity doesn't kill me, I'm good." Harmon's neck fronds fluttered with discomfort. Humans had a disturbing tendency to reference their own mortality in casual conversation. The psychological briefing had mentioned this. Apparently, living on a death world made one's relationship with danger somewhat skewed. The processing took 2 hours, during which the human remained polite, cooperative, and distressingly observant. She noticed the reinforced doors in the registration hall. She commented on the interesting design of the emergency bulkheads. She asked questions about the station's life support redundancies with what seemed like genuine academic interest, but made the safety coordinator who was processing her paperwork increasingly nervous. "These protocols seem really thorough," she observed, reading through the student safety guidelines on a datapad. Atmospheric breach procedures, radiation exposure response, hostile entity lockdown. Wait, hostile entity? Does that happen often? Statistical occurrence is minimal. The safety coordinator, a Quilnari whose shell was a pleasant shade of turquoise, assured her. The protocols exist as precautionary measures. Makes sense, the human agreed. We have fire drills, even though schools rarely burn down. Well, rarely. There was this one incident in New Jersey, but that was more of a chemistry experiment gone wrong than an actual fire. And honestly, the teacher should have known that mixing those particular compounds would generate that much heat, and definitely should not have done it in a classroom with wooden desks. The Quilnari made a note in the human's file concerning familiarity with destructive chemical reactions. Classes began the following day. Professor Zeltoth had been teaching astrophysics at the Institute for 40 cycles and had never encountered a student he could not either inspire or intimidate into academic excellence. He was a Vesithari, which meant he stood nearly 3 meters tall when fully extended, had 4 arms ending in sharp manipulators, and possessed bioluminescent markings that pulsed with his mood. On his homeworld, his species were apex predators, though they had long since evolved past such primitive behaviors into a civilized society that only occasionally referenced their hunting heritage during sporting events. The human sat in the 3rd row of his advanced theoretical astrophysics class, between a nervous Chloroxiani and a smug Vesithari student named Kren, who had made it clear he considered himself the top predator in any room he entered. Zeltoth began his lecture with the dramatic flair that had made him a student favorite. The universe operates on principles of elegant mathematics and cold physics. Your feelings about these principles are irrelevant. Your homeworld's conditions are irrelevant. The cosmos does not care if you survive. It simply is. The human was taking notes. Actual handwritten notes with a primitive writing instrument on paper. Zeltoth found this quaint. Consider the formation of stellar systems, he continued, manipulating the holographic display to show a collapsing gas cloud. Chaos becomes order through gravitational forces operating over millions of cycles. This is the foundation of everything. Without this process, none of your worlds would exist. None of you would exist to bore me with your inadequate understanding of orbital mechanics. A few students made sounds of amusement. Zeltoth's teaching style was famously abrasive. The human raised her hand. Zeltoth's luminescent patches flickered with curiosity. "Yes, exchange student?" "I was just wondering," she said, her tone genuinely interested and not at all confrontational. "If you could explain the gravitational variations that would occur in a system with multiple large planetary bodies in close proximity. Like, how would that affect the formation of smaller bodies? And would the tidal forces create unusual conditions on any planets that did manage to form in stable orbits?" Zeltoth paused. It was an excellent question, the kind that demonstrated actual comprehension of the underlying principles. An astute observation. Yes, such systems create complex gravitational interactions. The tidal forces alone would likely render most planets in such configurations uninhabitable. Constant geological activity, atmospheric stripping, radiation exposure from being pulled closer to the parent star during periapsis. No civilized species would evolve under such conditions. That makes sense, the human said, making another note. My planet has a really large moon, relatively speaking, and the tidal forces from that are pretty significant. I never thought about what it would be like with multiple large bodies affecting each other. Zeltoth's patches went still. Define large moon. Oh, about 1/4 the diameter of our planet? It's pretty close. 2, which is why we get tides that can vary by like 10 meters in some places. Creates some interesting coastal ecosystems. And the moon stabilizes our axial tilt, which keeps our seasons from going completely crazy, though they're still pretty extreme in some regions. The Chloroxia next to her had gone very quiet. Your planet has 10-meter tidal variations, Zeltoth repeated slowly. In some places, yeah. Bay of Fundy has some of the most extreme. Most places are less dramatic. The tidal forces also create internal heating through friction, which contributes to our geological activity. We have a lot of volcanoes and earthquakes. It's fine, though. You get used to it. Kren leaned forward, his patches glowing with amusement. Your world sounds unstable. How does your species manage to build lasting structures? The human turned to him with that same friendly smile. Engineering, mostly. We build with the expectation that the ground might move, so we design for flexibility and redundancy. Some of our oldest buildings have survived dozens of major earthquakes because they were built with techniques that account for ground movement. It's really interesting, actually. Different cultures develop different approaches based on their local conditions. Fascinating, Kren said, in a tone that suggested he found it anything but. On my world, the ground does not move. We build structures that last for millennia without concern for such instability. That's really nice, the human said genuinely. Must make construction a lot simpler. What's your planet's geological activity like? Minimal. We have no active volcanic systems, and seismic events are rare enough to be newsworthy. Huh. So your planet's core must be pretty cool? Or maybe you have a different heat distribution system? Zeltoth found himself in the unusual position of watching a human, a being from a world he had not yet researched, casually discuss planetary geology with an enthusiasm that was bordering on concerning. We will continue this discussion during office hours if you wish. For now, let us return to stellar formation. The class proceeded, but Zeltoth made a mental note to actually read the human's homeworld file that evening. He regretted this decision immediately upon opening it. Earth was classified as a Class 9 Deathworld, which was a rating Zeltoth had assumed was theoretical. The classification system only went to 10, and 10 was reserved for places like the sulfur oceans of Corax Prime, where life existed purely in theoretical, extremophile models that made xenobiologists question their career choices. The list of Earth's hostile conditions read like a creative writing exercise in planetary horror. Atmospheric oxygen percentage that would be considered flammable on most civilized worlds. Temperature variations of over 100 degrees in some regions. Weather systems that included rotating columns of air moving at speeds exceeding 200 kilometers per hour. Geological activity that could split continents. An extinction-level asteroid impact every few million cycles. Predators. So many predators. Predators in the oceans, predators on land, predators in the air, Predators that hunted other predators, predators that hunted in packs, predators that hunted alone, predators that used venom, predators that used stealth, predators that used persistence. And humans had not just survived this nightmare world. They had thrived. They had become the apex predator of every environment they occupied. They had achieved this not through superior strength or natural weapons, but through endurance, intelligence, and what the file described as unprecedented adaptability and tool use. Zeltoth read the section on human persistence hunting 3 times because he could not believe it was real. Humans had evolved to simply chase their prey until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. They could regulate their body temperature through liquid secretion, allowing them to continue pursuit even in heat that would kill most other species. They could survive on minimal water and food for extended periods. They healed from injuries that would be fatal to other species. They had neural architecture that allowed them to enter heightened states of awareness during crisis situations, temporarily suppressing pain and fear to focus on survival. The file noted, almost as an afterthought, that humans had reached their planet's space age while still having active military conflicts ongoing. They had developed nuclear weapons before they had developed interstellar communication theory. They had touched their moon before they had eliminated poverty on their homeworld. Zeltoth looked at the photo attached to the file. The human student, smiling brightly at the camera, wearing that ridiculous shirt about surviving chemistry class. He began composing a message to the dean of students, then stopped. What would he say? That he was concerned about a small, polite student who asked good questions about astrophysics? That her smile made him nervous? That her homeworld's conditions suggested she was statistically more dangerous than anything else currently on the station? He deleted the draft and decided to simply observe. Physical education was mandatory for all students, regardless of species. The theory was that a healthy body supported a healthy mind, though the practice was more about preventing students from spending 48 hours straight in the library during exam periods and forgetting that physical forms required maintenance. The gymnasium occupied a section of the station with adjustable gravity, allowing species from different homeworlds to exercise in their comfort zones. The human had been assigned to the low-gravity section, which seemed appropriate given that Earth's gravity was listed as 1.0 standard, and standard was the baseline that most species found comfortable. What the programming coordinator had failed to notice was that 1.0 standard was the galactic baseline, and Earth's actual gravity was slightly higher. The human had been living under increased weight her entire life. The game was Capture the Beacon, a multi-species friendly competition that involved teams trying to retrieve a glowing orb from the center of an obstacle course in zero gravity and return it to their base. It was meant to build teamwork, spatial reasoning, and cardiovascular health. The human floated in her starting position, still smiling, watching the other students prepare. She had changed into athletic clothing that covered most of her body, which the Chloroxian team captain found odd until remembering that humans had minimal fur and apparently felt cold easily. The whistle sounded. Students launched themselves toward the center, using handholds and momentum to navigate the 3-dimensional course. The Vesithari students moved with practiced grace, their multiple arms giving them clear advantages. The Chloroxians moved in coordinated groups, communicating in whistles. The Quilnari used their shells to bounce between surfaces. The human moved like water. There was no other way to describe it. She did not launch herself aggressively like the Vesithari or coordinate like the Chloroxians. She simply flowed through the course, using minimal motion for maximum effect. Her hands touched surfaces lightly, redirecting momentum rather than fighting it. Her body rotated smoothly through narrow gaps. Her eyes tracked everything, constantly calculating angles and trajectories. Kren noticed her first. He was heading for the beacon when she came up beside him from an angle he had not been watching. Her hand touched his shoulder, not pushing, just using his mass to redirect her own momentum. She rotated past him, grabbed the beacon, and was moving back toward her base before he had fully processed what happened. "Oh, you want to compete?" he called after her, his patches glowing bright with excitement. Finally, something interesting. He pushed hard off a wall, building speed. His team members moved to intercept the human. She saw them coming, obviously, because she saw everything. Instead of trying to fight through them, she grabbed a handhold and completely changed direction, moving up instead of forward. The Vesthari students adjusted, pursuing. The human rolled in midair, pushed off the ceiling, and dropped back down past them. Kren was genuinely impressed now. She was not stronger or faster, but she was efficient in a way that suggested serious training. What happened next would be reviewed by station security 17 times. The human approached a section of the course where 3 students were blocking the path to her base. She had the beacon. They had position. Standard tactics suggested she would either try to pass to a teammate or attempt to bull through. She did neither. Instead, she threw the beacon. Not to a teammate. She threw it directly at her base, a shot that should have been impossible from that angle with that much required precision. The beacon sailed through the zero-gravity environment in a perfect arc, passed between 2 obstacles, bounced once off a wall at exactly the right angle, and dropped neatly into her team's scoring zone. The gymnasium went silent. "How did you calculate that trajectory?" the programming coordinator asked, floating down from the observation deck. The human looked genuinely confused by the question. "I just threw it. I mean, I've been playing basketball since I was like 6, and we used to throw rocks at targets for fun when we were camping, so trajectories are kind of intuitive. Was I not supposed to throw it? The rules didn't say I couldn't throw it. The rules did not prohibit throwing because we did not anticipate anyone having the spatial calculation abilities to make that shot," the coordinator said faintly. "Oh, sorry. I can just do regular playing if that's better." No, perfectly legal, just unexpected." The game continued, but everyone was watching the human now. She did not make another spectacular shot, mostly because her team members started passing to her, and she spent more time setting up other players than scoring herself. But they all noticed how she moved, how she tracked multiple objects simultaneously, how she never seemed surprised by anything happening around her. After the game, 3 students reported to medical with severe motion sickness from trying to keep up with her movement patterns. One Quilnari claimed she had given him a panic attack just by making eye contact while moving, though he could not explain why her gaze had been so disturbing. The human visited medical to check on them, apologized sincerely for any distress she had caused, and offered to bring them something called ginger tea, which she claimed helped with nausea. The medical staff added a note to her file. Subject displays pack bonding behavior toward distressed individuals regardless of species affiliation. Recommends monitoring for over-attachment tendencies. Cafeteria time was when the carefully maintained illusion of species equality broke down into obvious territoriality. Herbivores clustered together, comparing notes on the limited selection of vegetation that the station's agricultural domes could produce. Carnivores maintained their own section, though most modern species had moved past, requiring fresh kills, and were perfectly content with synthesized protein. Omnivores floated between groups, generally accepted everywhere, but truly belonging nowhere. The human collected food from the Universal Nutrition Station, which was designed to provide balanced meals for species with varied dietary requirements. Her tray contained items that made the Chloroxian student behind her in line vaguely nauseous. Synthesized proteins, plant matter, some kind of grain, and a beverage that smelled of processed sugars. She sat down next to Harmon, who had been reviewing supply reports and hoping for a quiet meal. "Mind if I sit here?" she asked. "Please." Harmon gestured to the seat, deciding that monitoring the human during casual social time might provide useful data for his inevitable report to the council. "Thanks. I'm still figuring out the whole cafeteria social structure thing. On Earth, high school cafeterias have very strict social rules about where you can sit, and I was always paranoid about accidentally sitting at the wrong table and causing some kind of social disaster." "You attended an educational institution before arriving here?" "Yeah, I just finished what we call high school. This is kind of like my first year of university, except, in space with aliens, which is infinitely cooler than the state university I was probably going to attend." Harmon watched her eat, noting that she consumed her food efficiently but not aggressively. "Your planet has age-segregated education?" "Pretty much. We separate kids by age and put them through progressive levels of education. It's not perfect, but it mostly works." "Well, it works if you don't think too hard about the parts that don't work, which is probably true of most systems." "And you are in what stage of development?" The human paused, her eating utensil halfway to her mouth. "I'm 17, 18 in a few months. Why?" Harmon's neck fronds went completely still. "You are not yet an adult by your species standards?" "I mean, legally I'm not an adult until 18. But I'm close enough that my parents signed the permission forms for the exchange program. Some countries consider you an adult at 16, some at 21. It varies." "You are a juvenile," Harmon said, his voice emerging as a high whistle that his translator struggled to render. "They sent us a juvenile from a Class 9 Deathworld." "Is that a problem?" "Several problems," Harmon thought, but did not say. The primary one being that if this was a juvenile human's capabilities, what exactly were adult humans capable of? "No problem," he managed. "I was simply curious about human development stages." "Oh, cool. Yeah, we have a pretty extended childhood compared to some species, I think. Our brains don't finish developing until we're like 25. Something about the frontal cortex and decision-making. It's why teenagers do dumb things. Our risk assessment is literally not fully functional yet." Harmon made a mental note to add this information to his report under a new section titled "Reasons for Immediate Concern." "What is your favorite food?" he asked, desperately changing the subject. The human brightened. "Oh, that's hard. I really like pasta, which is this wheat-based dish from my region of Earth, and pizza, which is basically bread with tomato sauce and cheese and whatever toppings you want. And my mom makes this amazing roast chicken with potatoes and vegetables that's just perfect. Oh, and chocolate. Chocolate is probably humanity's greatest achievement, even better than space travel." "Chicken?" "It's a bird, well, descended from birds. We domesticated them thousands of years ago for eggs and meat." "You consume other species?" The human's expression shifted to confused. "Yeah, I mean, humans are omnivores. We eat plants and animals. Most of our diet is plants, depending on the region and culture. But meat is a pretty standard protein source. Do Chloroxians not eat meat?" "We are herbivores," Harmon said, his fronds pulling tight against his head in distress. "We consume only plant matter." "Oh, that makes sense. Your digestive system is probably optimized for processing cellulose efficiently. That's actually really cool from an evolutionary perspective. Humans have a really mixed digestive system because we evolved to eat basically whatever we could find. Persistence hunters, scavengers, opportunistic feeders. Our ancestors literally ate anything that wouldn't kill them, and sometimes things that would kill them if they were desperate enough." A Quilnari at the next table had stopped eating to listen, their feeding appendages frozen in horror. "You hunt other creatures for sustenance?" the Quilnari asked. "I mean, I personally don't hunt. I buy my food from stores. But yeah, historically humans were hunters. We're actually really good at it. We don't have the speed of a lot of predators, but we have endurance. Persistence hunting, where you just chase an animal until it collapses from exhaustion, was a major food acquisition strategy for our ancestors. Humans can run for hours. Most prey animals can sprint fast but tire quickly. So you just keep following them. Eventually they can't run anymore and you can walk up and kill them." The cafeteria had gone very quiet. "That seems inefficient," Kren said from across the room, his voice carrying clearly. "A proper predator uses speed or stealth or venom. Chasing prey for hours is ridiculous." The human turned to face him, still smiling. "I mean, it works though. Humans are endurance specialists. We can outlast almost anything. Our bodies are really good at regulating temperature through sweating, which lets us cool down while running. Most animals have to stop and pant to cool off. We just keep going. There's documented cases of human hunters running prey to death in heat that would kill other predators. It's not elegant, but it's effective." "Your species weaponized determination," Harmon said faintly. "I never thought about it that way, but yeah, kind of. Humans are stubborn. We don't give up easy. It's probably why we survived long enough to develop technology, honestly. Our planet kept trying to kill us, and we just kept refusing to die." The medical staff would later note that 3 students requested anxiety medication after this conversation, and 2 species filed requests with their homeworld governments about reconsidering the exchange program parameters. The human finished her meal, thanked Harmon for the conversation, and left to attend her next class with that same cheerful smile. Laboratory practical examination was designed to test students' ability to apply theoretical knowledge to practical problems under pressure. Teams of 4 were assigned a crisis scenario and given 2 hours to develop a solution using available resources and their combined knowledge. The humans' team consisted of Kren, who had insisted on being assigned to her group to prove that Vesithari superiority extended beyond theory, a nervous Cloroxian named Whisper of Wind Through Leaves, who went by Wisp, and a Quilnari named Tika Chek, whose shell bore the blue markings of their home region's academic elite. Their scenario was announced by the supervising professor. "A research vessel has encountered a nebula with unexpected electromagnetic properties that are interfering with navigation systems and causing gradual system failures. You must devise a method to either shield the vessel's systems or navigate out of the nebula using alternative means. You have access to the vessel's specifications, material inventory, and 2 hours. Begin." Kren immediately took charge. "Obviously, we need to create electromagnetic shielding using the ship's existing materials. Tika Chek, calculate the frequency range of the interference. Wisp, analyze the material inventory for suitable shielding components. Human, you can document our process." The human, who had been reading through the vessel specifications with frightening speed, looked up. "Actually, I have a thought." "Your thought can wait. We have a systematic approach to implement." "Right. But the specs show that the ship has backup mechanical navigation systems that don't rely on electronics, like actual physical gyroscopes and star charts. If the electromagnetic interference is affecting the electronic systems, we could just bypass them entirely and navigate manually." Kren's patches glowed with annoyance. Manual navigation is primitive and imprecise. But it works. and it's faster than trying to manufacture electromagnetic shielding with materials that might not even be effective against the specific frequency range of the interference. We don't know what's causing the interference, so any shielding we create might not work. Manual navigation is guaranteed to function because it doesn't rely on the systems that are failing. Tik-Chek's shells shifted colors thoughtfully. The human raises a valid point. The scenario does not specify that we must repair the existing systems, only that we must navigate out of the nebula. We should at least calculate the shielding option, Kren insisted. Sure, the human agreed. Tik-Chek can run those calculations while I work out a manual navigation solution. Wisp, can you help me map the most efficient course out of the nebula using the ship's last known position and velocity? Wisp looked between Kren and the human nervously, then floated over to the human's workstation. What happened over the next 90 minutes was a masterclass in efficient problem-solving. The human did not try to dominate the group or override Kren's authority. She simply worked on her solution while letting him pursue his. When Tik-Chek's calculations revealed that the available materials could not effectively shield against the full range of possible interference frequencies, she did not gloat. She just presented her manual navigation solution, which included backup protocols, safety checks, and a detailed procedure for the crew to follow. Kren stared at her work with his patches cycling through colors that suggested deep, internal conflict. This is actually comprehensive. Thanks. I figured we should have redundancies in case something goes wrong with the manual systems, too. Like, what if the gyroscope is also damaged? We could navigate by stellar position if we have updated star charts. The ship's library would have those stored in physical format. You anticipated multiple failure points. Things usually go wrong in more ways than you expect. Better to have contingencies. Their team presented their solution to the professor with 40 minutes remaining on the clock, the fastest completion time in the class. The professor reviewed their work with increasing interest. You have essentially reverted to pre-electronic navigation methods, the professor observed. Yes, Professor, the human said. The scenario emphasized that electronic systems were failing, so we eliminated our dependence on those systems entirely. The solution is less sophisticated, but more reliable under the specific conditions described. And these backup protocols? In case the primary manual systems also fail. We developed 3 independent navigation methods that could each independently guide the ship out of the nebula. The professor's expression shifted to something the human could not read, but that made Tik-Chek's shell flash with the color of triumph. Your team has achieved the optimal solution. Most teams will attempt to shield the electronic systems, which is possible but resource-intensive and time-consuming. You identified the core problem and solved it efficiently. Well done. After class, Kren approached the human in the corridor. His patches were glowing steady blue, which he had learned indicated serious thought. You have done this before, he said. Solved hypothetical navigation problems? No. Faced actual crises. Your approach was not theoretical. You assessed the situation, identified the most reliable solution, and implemented it without hesitation. That is crisis response training. The human's smile faded slightly. My planet is really good at teaching crisis response. We kind of have to be. Between natural disasters, accidents, and general chaos, humans learn pretty early that things go wrong, and you need to know how to handle it. You were calm, completely calm. I have seen soldiers with less composure. I mean, it wasn't a real crisis. It was a test. You approached it as if it were real. The human paused, and for the first time since arriving at the Institute, her expression became genuinely serious. On Earth, we have a saying, train like you fight, Fight like you train. If you practice half-heartedly, you'll perform half-heartedly when it matters. So yeah, I treated it like it was real, because that's how you make sure you're actually ready when something real happens. Kren's patches went dark, which indicated either deep respect or deep concern. Possibly both. Your world has made you into a warrior. Not really. I'm just a student who happens to come from a place where survival skills are pretty standard education. Like, I learned basic first aid in school. I learned how to identify which plants are poisonous. I learned what to do if there's a fire or an earthquake or a flood. That's just normal Earth stuff. That is not normal, Kren said quietly. That is military preparedness training. The human looked genuinely surprised. Seriously? You don't learn that stuff? My homeworld is peaceful. We have safety systems that prevent disasters. Our education focuses on academic and artistic development, not survival skills. Huh. That sounds really nice, actually. Must be way less stressful. Your homeworld tried to kill you so frequently that you were trained from childhood to survive it. I mean, when you put it like that, it sounds dramatic, but yeah, pretty much. Kren was silent for a long moment. I apologize for underestimating you. No worries, I get it. I probably don't look like much compared to most species here. I'm small, I'm from a developing world, and I smile too much. But I'm here to learn, same as everyone else. We're good. We are not good. I attempted to diminish your contributions out of pride. And now you're not. People make mistakes. The important thing is what you do after. She extended her hand. Still teammates? Kren touched her hand carefully, aware now of what those hands represented. A species that had climbed to the top of a nightmare world's food chain through sheer determination and adaptability. Teammates. The human's smile returned, bright and genuine. Awesome. Want to grab some of that weird purple juice from the cafeteria? I can't figure out what flavor it's supposed to be, but it's growing on me. As she walked away, Kren remained in the corridor, watching her go. A Vesthari warrior who had fought in his planet's ceremonial combat leagues, who prided himself on his predator heritage, who had assumed himself superior to every other student at the Institute. He had just apologized to a juvenile human, and she had accepted it with grace, had called them teammates, had offered friendship. His species' ancient instincts, the ones buried deep beneath civilization and education, were screaming a truth that his rational mind had been trying to ignore. That small human with her bright smile and casual competence was the most dangerous thing he had ever encountered. And she had no idea. She genuinely thought she was just a normal student from a normal world doing normal things. The gap between her self-perception and reality was terrifying. 3 weeks into the semester, the mandatory emergency response drill was announced. These drills occurred twice per cycle and were designed to ensure that all station inhabitants knew proper evacuation procedures in case of genuine emergency. What the students were not told was that the drill scenarios were rated by difficulty level. And this particular drill was designated Level 7, Hostile Entity Breach with System Compromise. It was usually reserved for military personnel and security training. Someone in administration had made a catastrophic scheduling error. The alarm sounded during third period. Lights shifted to emergency blue. The automated announcement declared, "Security breach detected in Sector 4. Hostile entity confirmed. All personnel initiate evacuation protocol Echo. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." The humans' advanced xenobiology class reacted according to their species' evolutionary heritage. The Chloroxians clustered together, looking to their professor for guidance. The Quilnari retreated into their shells. The Vesithari students began posturing aggressively, their patches glowing with alarm colors. The human stood up smoothly, her entire demeanor shifting in a way that made Harmon, the professor, take an involuntary step backward. Gone was the cheerful student asking questions about cellular biology. What stood before him was a predator, evaluating a threat scenario. "Which way to Sector 4?" she asked, her voice calm and level. "The breach is in Sector 4. We evacuate away from—" "Which direction?" Something in her tone made Harmon point. The human nodded once, then turned to address the class. "Everyone stay together. Chloroxians in the middle of the group, Quilnari around them, Vesithari on the outside. Move quickly, but don't run. Running makes noise and attracts attention. Wisp, you're the fastest swimmer, yes? Your species evolved in aquatic environments?" Wisp nodded, too shocked to speak. "You're our scout. Stay 10 meters ahead, but keep visual contact. If you see anything wrong, you signal and drop back immediately. Tick-check. Your shell can withstand impacts, right?" Yes. "Your rear guard. Keep distance but watch behind us. Kren, you're with me at front. Everyone understand?" The students nodded automatically, responding to the absolute authority in her voice. "Good. Professor, you have station layout memorized?" Harmon found himself nodding. "Guide us to the nearest emergency shelter. Optimal route, avoiding main corridors where possible. Secondary passages are better. Smaller spaces limit approach vectors." Yes. Follow me." The group moved into the corridor, arranged exactly as the human had directed. She moved at the front with Kren, her eyes constantly scanning. Her breathing had slowed, her movements were precise and economical. "You have done this before," Kren whispered. "Active shooter drills, earthquake procedures, fire evacuations, different scenario, same principles." "Your planet rehearses for attack scenarios?" "Constantly." They encountered another group of students in the corridor, panicking and disorganized. The human did not hesitate. "You 6, join our group. Chloroxian center hard-shelled species outside. Stay quiet and stay together." "Who put you in charge?" a Quilnari from the other group demanded. The human turned to look at them, and several students made sounds of distress. Her eyes were flat, calculating, predatory. "I did. You want to argue about it, or do you want to survive? Choose fast." They joined the group. The evacuation continued. The human directed people with calm efficiency, making decisions without hesitation. When they reached a corridor junction, she stopped the group. "Wisp, check both paths. Don't go far." The Chloroxian floated forward, checking the corridors, then returned. "Left path clear. Right path has something moving." "We go left. Double time. Keep formation." They made it to the emergency shelter and sealed the door. 23 students and 1 professor, all alive and unharmed. The human positioned herself by the door, looking through the small window, still watching. "We should be safe here," Harmon said. "Safe is relative. We're secure for now. Keep everyone calm and quiet. If something tries to breach the door, we move to the interior room and barricade. Kren, inventory emergency supplies. Tika-check, check for secondary exits." "The drill should end soon," a student said hopefully. The human's expression did not change. "Maybe. We plan as if it won't." 15 minutes later, the all clear sounded. The announcement declared the drill complete and praised all participants for following proper evacuation protocols. The human's posture relaxed slightly, but her eyes remained alert. They returned to the main corridors to find that several other groups had not been as efficient. Minor injuries from panic-driven stampedes. One group had gone toward the breach instead of away from it in their confusion. The station security chief was reviewing response times when the humans group emerged. She looked at their organized formation, their calm demeanor, their 0 injuries. "Who is your group leader?" the chief asked. Everyone pointed to the human. The security chief pulled up her datapad, checking the drill parameters, and her expression cycled through confusion, shock, and something approaching alarm. This drill was level 7, military grade. You navigated it with 0 casualties and optimal response time. "We stayed together and moved carefully," the human said. "Everyone followed directions really well. You organized a multi-species evacuation under hostile conditions, maintained group cohesion, and made tactically sound decisions throughout. We just evacuated. It's not that complicated." The security chief looked at the human's file on her datapad, her expression growing more concerned with each line she read. "You thought it was real. The announcement said it was real. You treated this as actual combat. I treated it as an emergency that required appropriate response. If it had been a drill, great, we practiced good habits. If it had been real, we would have survived. Either way seemed like a good outcome." The security chief added a note to the incident report. Human exchange student displayed advanced tactical reasoning, natural command capability, and stress-adapted response behavior consistent with military training. Recommend psychological evaluation and updated threat assessment. In the administration office that evening, an emergency meeting was called. Dean of Students Vrelkoth, a dignified Quilnari with 300 cycles of educational administration experience, reviewed the semester's accumulated reports on the human student with increasing concern. "Let me ensure I understand correctly," Vrelkoth said slowly. "This student has demonstrated advanced spatial reasoning, natural tactical command, crisis response training, persistence predator behavior, pack bonding social patterns, and maintains a constant state of threat assessment while presenting a friendly, non-threatening social interface." "Correct," Harmon confirmed. "And she is 17 cycles old by her species reckoning." "Correct." "Not yet an adult?" "Correct." "Her brain has not finished developing." "According to her own statement, correct." Vrelkoth was quiet for a long moment. "What have we brought to this station?" "A student," the human's academic advisor said carefully. "A brilliant, friendly, highly capable student who has perfect attendance, excellent grades, and helps other students with their coursework. Who navigated a level 7 military drill with 0 preparation." "Also correct." "I need to see her complete homeworld file, the unredacted version." The file took 2 hours to arrive, transmitted from the Galactic Council's Xenobiology archives. It had been classified Level 5, which meant it was typically only accessible to military intelligence and xenological threat assessment divisions. The assembled administrators read in silence. Earth's classification was not just Class 9 Deathworld. It was Class 9 with a designation the Council had created specifically for humanity. Apex Adaptive Species from Hostile Origin World. Humans had not just survived their planet. They had conquered it. Every environment, every climate, every ecological niche. They had spread across their world like water, filling every space, adapting to conditions that would kill other species. The file included information that the public-facing documents omitted. Human immune systems that could fight off diseases that would devastate other species. Healing capabilities that allowed recovery from injuries that should be fatal. adrenaline response that could temporarily grant strength, exceeding their normal capabilities. The capacity to function through pain that would incapacitate most sentients. And their psychology. Humans bonded with anything. Other humans, other species, sometimes even inanimate objects. They formed packs, tribes, families, nations. They were fiercely protective of those they bonded with, and absolutely merciless to threats against their pack. They had evolved to look non-threatening because they hunted through persistence and intelligence, not intimidation. The smile that made administrators nervous was actually a human social signal of friendliness, but it involved baring teeth, which most predators recognized as a threat display. Humans had reached their atomic age while still having active military conflicts. They had developed weapons capable of destroying their entire planet while simultaneously creating art, music, philosophy, and literature. They were contradictions wrapped in paradox, capable of extraordinary compassion and terrifying violence, often from the same individual. "She's been holding back," Xeltoth said quietly. "Everything we have seen is her attempting to fit in, to not stand out, to be a normal student. And she still navigated a military-grade drill with perfect tactical execution," the security chief added. "What do we do?" Harmon asked. Vrelkoth considered carefully. The human student had broken no rules. She had excelled academically. She had helped other students. She had been polite, friendly, and cooperative. The fact that she was also probably the most dangerous individual on the station was not actually a violation of any policy. "We continue the program," Vrelkoth decided. "But we update our threat assessments and ensure security is aware. We recommend counseling services." Counseling? She is 17, away from her homeworld for the first time, surrounded by species that did not evolve in active combat with their environment. She must be lonely. This had not occurred to any of them. "We pair her with a student counselor familiar with culture shock," Vrelkoth continued. "We ensure she has access to appropriate physical challenges. Her physiology clearly requires more stimulation than our standard programs provide. And we monitor, but we do not restrict. She has earned her place here through merit." "And if there is an actual emergency?" the security chief asked. Vrelkoth's shell shifted to a wry color. "Then we will be very grateful she is on our side." The semester continued. The human attended classes, completed assignments, and participated in social activities. Other students gradually adapted to her presence, learning to recognize that her predator behaviors were simply how she existed in the world. Kren became something resembling a friend, bonding with her over their respective species' hunting heritage. They studied together, argued about astrophysics, and developed a relationship built on mutual respect between different types of predator. Wisp lost his fear of her after she spent 3 hours helping him understand quantum mechanics, patiently explaining concepts until they made sense. He came to appreciate that her predator assessment behavior meant she was always aware of her surroundings, which made her paradoxically safe to be near. She would notice threats before anyone else. Tikchek discovered that humans found Quilnari's shell patterns aesthetically pleasing and spent an entertaining afternoon explaining the cultural significance of different color variations while the human asked genuinely interested questions. The human joined study groups, athletic teams, and social clubs. She introduced other students to human music, which most species found chaotic but energetic. She taught them human games, which were universally agreed to be unnecessarily complicated and probably dangerous. She was, by all standard measures, thriving. But sometimes, late at night in the station's observation deck, she would stand at the windows, looking out at the stars. Harmon found her there once, during his own sleepless wandering. "Cannot sleep?" he asked. She smiled, but it was different from her usual expression. Softer, sadder. "Just thinking about home. You miss your planet. I miss my family, my friends, my dog, which is a domesticated canine predator we keep as companions. I miss knowing how things work, you know? Here, I have to think about everything. Which species is comfortable with direct eye contact? Which ones consider it threatening? Whether asking personal questions is normal or invasive? Whether my normal speaking volume is too loud? On Earth, I could just exist without worrying about accidentally scaring people." Harmon sat beside her, as much as his anatomy allowed sitting. "You are adapting remarkably well." "I'm trying. But sometimes I wonder if I belong here. Everyone is so peaceful. You have all these species that evolved without constantly fighting to survive. And then there is Earth, where everything is trying to kill you, and we just got really good at refusing to die. Your perspective is valuable precisely because it is different. Or it is just weird and uncomfortable for everyone. Perhaps both can be true." The human laughed, a genuine sound of amusement. "Yeah, probably." They sat in comfortable silence, watching stars slide past the station's rotation. "Thank you," the human said eventually. "For what?" "For trying. I know I am probably not what you expected when you agreed to host an exchange student. But you have been really kind and patient, and I appreciate it." Harmon's fronds fluttered with warmth. "You have taught us much. About resilience, about adaptation, about finding joy even in difficult circumstances. Humans are good at that. We have to be. If we could not find humor and happiness even when things are terrible, we would have given up a long time ago. Your species weaponized hope." The human considered this. "Huh. Yeah, I guess we did. Hope, stubbornness, and the absolute refusal to accept that something is impossible just because it is really, really hard. It is a good weapon." "Thanks, Harmon." The semester moved toward final examinations. Students stressed about grades, complained about workload, and formed study groups that devolved into social gatherings. The human study group met in the library, a mix of species working through practice problems together. "I still do not understand wormhole mechanics," Wisp complained, his fronds drooping with exhaustion. "Think of space like fabric," the human suggested. "If you fold the fabric, two distant points can touch. A wormhole is like punching through both layers at once instead of traveling across the surface. But the energy requirements are massive." "Sure, but theoretically possible. Humans have a saying, the difference between theory and practice is smaller in theory than in practice. Just because we can imagine it does not mean we can build it yet." "Your species has many sayings," Tick-Check observed. "We have been around for a while and we like to think we are clever. So we make up sayings to feel wise." "Are humans wise?" Kren asked. The human laughed. "Absolutely not. We are clever, creative, and stubborn. But wise? We barely figured out that maybe we should stop destroying our own planet like 50 years ago. And we are still arguing about actually doing it. Wisdom is not our strong point. Yet you survived. Survival does not require wisdom. It requires adaptation and luck. We got really good at the first and had enough of the second." "False modesty does not suit you," Kren said. "Your species achieved spaceflight, created complex civilizations, developed technology that approaches galactic standards. That requires more than luck." "Okay, fine. We are also really good at working together when we want to be. Humans are social. We build communities, share knowledge, help each other. Our greatest achievements came from collaboration, not individual brilliance. Pack bonding, Harmon said, joining their table with a stack of research materials. It is your species' true evolutionary advantage, not strength or speed, but the ability to form cooperative groups that function as single units. We do like our teams, the human agreed. It makes you formidable, Harmon said quietly. A single human is dangerous. A group of humans working together is nearly unstoppable. The study session continued, but the other students were thinking about what Harmon had said. They had seen glimpses of human capability, individual moments of competence. But what would humanity look like as a unified species? It was a question the Galactic Council was also asking, in closed sessions with restricted access. Humanity had been granted provisional membership, allowed to send observers and exchange students. But full integration into the galactic community required assessment of their potential impact. The human student at Celestial Institute was not the only human in space. There were diplomats, scientists, military observers, cultural representatives. Each one was being carefully watched, evaluated, measured against the standards of civilized society. And humanity, unaware of the scrutiny, or perhaps simply unconcerned by it, continued being themselves. Curious, friendly, adaptable, and absolutely terrifying to anyone who looked closely enough to see the predator underneath the smile. Final examinations came and went. The human scored in the top 10th percentile of her class across all subjects. Her practical examinations were marked with comments like exceptional problem solving and innovative approach, and occasionally unorthodox but effective. On the last day of the semester, the human stood in the departure bay with her small backpack, preparing to return to Earth for the break between academic periods. Kren approached her, his patches glowing soft blue. "You will return next semester?" It was not a question. "If they will have me," the human said. "They would be fools to refuse. You have proven yourself." "I just did my homework and tried not to scare anyone too badly." "You failed at the second part." The human laughed. "Yeah, I got that impression. But you all got used to me eventually. We adapted, as you have adapted to us. Mutual adaptation. Sounds like a good basis for coexistence." Wisp floated over, followed by Tikachek and several other students who had formed friendships with the human over the semester. "Will you bring back more human things?" Wisp asked hopefully. "Your music and food and stories? If you want, I can bring some stuff from home, maybe some books, some snacks. Definitely better music than what I had on my datapad." "And you will tell us more about Earth?" Tikchek asked. "Sure. What do you want to know?" "Everything," Kren said simply. "Your world has made you what you are. We wish to understand it." The human smile was genuine, warm, pleased. "I can do that. Fair warning, though. A lot of Earth stories are kind of intense. We have very dramatic history." "We will cope," Kren assured her. The boarding call sounded. The human picked up her backpack, waved to her friends, and walked toward the transport shuttle. Harmon watched her go, his fronds settling into contemplative patterns. "What are you thinking?" Vrelkoth asked, having come to observe the departure. "I am thinking that we have been very fortunate," Harmon said slowly. "That human is kind. She chose friendship over dominance, cooperation over competition. But her species is newly spacefaring. There will be others who make different choices. You fear humanity? I respect them. Fear and respect are often close neighbors." "She will return," Vrelkoth said. "The Council has approved continued human participation in the exchange program. More will come." "How many more?" "Next year, 5 humans across various institutions. The year after 20. They are integrating, gradually. Harmon watched the shuttle depart, carrying the human back to her nightmare world where the sky rained destruction and the ground moved without warning, and every living thing fought constantly for survival. And she would return. They always returned, because humans did not give up. They did not retreat. They adapted, learned, grew, and came back stronger. The galaxy is going to change, Harmon said quietly. It already has, Vrelkoth replied. We simply have not realized it yet. On the transport shuttle, the human looked out the window at the station growing smaller in the distance. Luminara 7 had been her home for 4 months. A strange and wonderful place full of people who had never known violence or hunger or fear. She had learned much, not just about astrophysics and xenobiology and quantum mechanics, but about what it meant to exist without constant threat assessment. To live in peace not because you were strong enough to defend yourself, but because there was nothing to defend against. It seemed impossible, beautiful and fragile and impossible. But she would return, and she would bring others with her, humans who would see this galaxy and these peaceful species and make the same choice she had made. To protect rather than dominate, to teach rather than conquer, to offer strength in service of those who did not have it. Because that was what humans did. They survived, they adapted, and they bonded with anything that let them. Even aliens who thought a smile was terrifying. The shuttle jumped to FTL, and Earth waited ahead, spinning through space with its lethal weather and continental-scale disasters and billions of humans all trying their best to not destroy themselves or their planet. Home, she smiled, genuine and bright and utterly human, as the stars blurred into light. Behind her smile, as always, was the knowledge that she was a predator from a world of predators, but also the hope, very human and stubborn and absolutely refusing to be diminished, that maybe this galaxy could become home too. That maybe, despite everything, there was room in the universe for a species that had weaponized determination and stubbornness and the absolute refusal to give up. The galaxy would adapt